Okay. Now this is a fault finding thing, basically fits in with engine performance too, but what I was getting at was whenever a lot of your engine performance stuff will be an electrical issue or something like that, like if you're digging into something like trying to find out why you got an oxygen sensor heater code and somebody's already put the oxygen sensor on there and the heater code is still there. Of course, you also need to make sure you're working on the right oxygen sensor. This one here had a speedometer problem. This is actually the service bay where I worked for several years, you know, at the Ford place over there, and it was a little Ford Escort, and it came in there, and the way it played out was this other guy that worked on it, another mechanic. There were 25 mechanics at that dealership, and the guy worked on it for a problem with the speedometer, and he put a sensor in there, speed sensor, because the speedometer wasn't working and the transmission wouldn't shift. And so he went ahead and put a speed sensor in there, and so he drove it around, seemed like it was okay, pulled it around there, and the customer didn't get anywhere before they came back and said, I've got the same problem I had before. And so I was the second opinion guy. They threw it at me on this. And so I plugged in the Worldwide Diagnostic System, which is kind of like the IDS, but it was the earlier version of it. And I wound up, there was no communications with the PCM, even though the engine would run. I had no PCM communications. I'm saying, why don't I have PCM communication? And so the part swap didn't fix that. And so you got to understand your DCL. And there's your data communication link, what it looks like under the dash where you plug in. Now I want you guys to always remember this. You see that pin right there? Does anybody know what that pin there does? On the data communication link, you see it's made like it's wider at the top than it is at the bottom. And everybody's vehicles have this. In the United States, we got this OBD2 connector. And these other pins have got various different assignments, but that pin and those two pins right there are always going to be the same thing on every OBD2 connector. This one right here is typically fed by the cigar lighter fuse, and it's going to be hot all the time. That's your 16. Pin 16, it starts over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and it goes all the way to 16. 4 and 5 are going to be ground, 16 is going to be hot. Can you remember that? 16 is going to be hot. You plug your scan tool in, it won't boot up. If the scan tool won't boot up and it's being fed with power by this, you're going to be looking at that and you're going to be looking at those grounds. And typically you'll find out that there's somebody that's blown the cigarette lighter fuse. All right. Now what you got right here, see this is your DCL connector right here. You got a ground on pin 5 and then a different ground coming from a different place on pin 4. So it's not just two grounds. You notice we got a little DCL connector down here so we can plug a scan tool in on that board if we want to. Alright, so you might notice also your pin 7 is basically talking to your route module and your ABS control module. And then basically you got the powertrain control module. And you got these pins here going to it. Now, you're going to notice too that if you've got your, every engine controller has got two different rooms in it. One of them is an OBD1 line, and then the other two, there's a couple of lines that give you your standard corporate protocol, as I remember it. But see, there's your pin 16. So there's your data link right there. All right, so what we got right here is another little shot at that. You can look at this, how the thing is laid out. There's how the pins are numbered, and that's how it looks when you look under there. Just a little shot at it. I got into the data stream with a scope, and this was an older scope that I had. It was just a one trace scope that I used for ignition diagnostics when I was over there. We got it from the Mac Tool guy, a Caliquip scope basically, but Mac Tool was ET975. Long and short of it was, I was seeing activity there. Now you're not going to be able to interpret what they're looking at other than the fact that if you've got your scan tool plugged in and you're on your data line and you're getting activity there, that means at least that you got activity on that line. So we've got something else going on here. Alright, so got a map of the speed sensor circuit. So we had already replaced the speed sensor, but we got no activity here. And so you might notice that this is the back of the instrument cluster where we're going, and we got this particular one, pin 7, you see pin 7 right there, is going to be ground. And vehicle speed sensor input is pin 9. So basically I go between those two with my meter. I should be able to read, if I go from here to here, I should be able to read the resistance of that sensor, shouldn't I? Shouldn't I? Yes or no? Are you paying attention, or are you just waiting for me to shut up so you can go to lunch? Let's start watching and thinking, okay? That's what I'm doing here. So if I get my meter and I go here to here, which is on those 2 pins, and I measure it with my meter, I should see the resistance, the proper resistance of that speed sensor. This is how I did that. On the back of the cluster, now typically you'll unplug the cluster connector when you do this, but in that particular case, I just connected, and I said, I'm getting the same resistance here, basically within a very little bit that I'm getting if I go right to the sensor. And so that's, I got my I'm back probing. Now, one of the things you don't want to do when you're doing electrical is to cram the probe in the front of that connector and destroy the connectors where they can't make a contact. You know what I mean? That's why I go in the back if I can, or I'll use one of those little prick tools to go in there. All right, this ain't good. That is a, what is that? That's a battery terminal. And coming off of here is a little connector where all the grounds are supposed to hook up. You see how crummy that looks? These batteries, sometimes whenever they get old, they'll leak for between the lead post and the plastic part of that battery. All right, when you unplug that little ground terminal, I'm seeing all this chalk in there. I'm seeing hidden chalk. All right, these grounds are basically the ones that are feeding the data link connector, also grounds the speed sensor. All right, so I said, well, I'm gonna go ahead and replace this battery terminal, but I keep cutting this battery cable back, looking for a place that doesn't have all this acid chalk in there. And it can ruin a whole cable. But if you keep going back far enough, I have actually gone all the way down the whole cable looking for a clean place, and there ain't one. You know what capillary attraction is? Capillary attraction, have you ever, you know when you give blood, how they'll have this little teeny tiny tube, and they'll prick your finger and it's got a little drop of blood there, and when you touch it, it runs up in that tube? That's capillary attraction. That's what makes a ballpoint pen work. Okay, this acid goes up in all those wires, and it begins to corrode that copper, and you get this kind of stuff. Well, eventually, when you go far enough, you can find copper that looks good. Well, hey there.
Hey there, how are you?
Yeah, I had told Judy that the belt they ordered for that car won't be here until tomorrow morning. And she said she was going to call you and tell you not to bring it today.
And I must have left before she...
Yeah, well, hang around a little while and we'll do a lunch.
Well, I got an appointment in Andalusia, so
Okay.
I need to go on over there.
Yeah,
What
but
time do I need to
Just
be
bring
there?
it back tomorrow morning. I'm going to say about 8 o'clock or 8:30, and probably the belt should be here by then.
Okay.
All right?
All right, thank you.
But anyway, so what I did was I got one of these solder-on battery terminals, and you know what we do is we heat that up and we fill that up with solder, and then we shove that cable down in there, and you got a good permanent connection there, right? You guys have done that in electrical one, okay? So that's not complicated. Back here, when I got back to the place where I finally had some good wire, I got a new piece of wire and I meshed it together with that one, and then I used a torch to go ahead and just solder that together really good. Then I got to put a good piece of heat shrink on it, so I didn't have to replace the whole cable. Now, replacing the whole cable wouldn't be such a bad thing, but a lot of the times on these, the cable will go and it'll ground here, and then it goes over and it grounds somewhere else. So I kind of like to leave that cable alone if I can help it. So on some of these diesel pickup trucks, that cable costs over $100. And it'll take you an hour and a half, 2 hours to change it. So if possible, I'm going to fix it up here. And if you do a good job, you don't have any more trouble. And that's what it looks like right there. See, I actually put the wires in there with that soldered joint when I put them all in there together. And then I soldered them here instead, and got rid of that crummy connector that I'd done all that. Now I'll tell you one time, yeah, what I was doing one time, I had worked on so many Tauruses that had bad fuel pumps back in the day, and I had seen, you know, it seemed like every other day there's a Taurus coming in with a bad fuel pump. Of course, at that shop we were running 100 cars a day through the shop, you know, and I was working out 12, 15 cars a day sometimes, trying to, you know, just keep my head above water and all. So what I did was I says, you know, I checked the fuel pump, pull, you know, going back to the fuel pump. If you've got a ground coming through the motor. Nope, I don't have no ground coming through the motor, so, you know, off comes the tank, I pop a fuel pump in it, I get in it, I still got no start, still got no ground through the motor, And this same sort of thing was going on that Taurus. It had chalky stuff you couldn't see without unplugging the connector, and that's where the ground was, all the way back to the battery. You know what I mean? So I went ahead and fixed that. And I left the fuel pump in there, not because I was too lazy to take it back out, but he put the old one back in there and it fails a couple of days later. They want the new one for free. And too many of them were failing. See what I'm saying? So I just went ahead and left that one in there. Another speedometer problem. Speedometer inoperative, overdrive light flashing, check engine light on. This was on a 97 F-150. All right, another one I fixed over there. Now it had some miles on it. Powertrain control module gets the speed signal directly from the speed sensor, as does the cruise. This is a computerized instrument cluster. Now the Escort was an electrically driven speedometer, but it didn't have a cable going to it. It was just running off that speed signal. This one here is a little bit different because it's got a microprocessor built into the instrument cluster. I got some instrument clusters laying up there that are like this one. It depends on the speed signal for the transmission shift strategy, and since the PCM illuminated the check engine light and started flashing the overdrive light on the purple stick, the signal wasn't present there. So the cruise control was also inoperative. Here's the thing you need to do. If you're looking at an electrical problem, you need to see if there's anything else that you see that may be related to it. You know what I mean? Check other things. Because a lot of the times you can draw yourself a picture in your mind and say, okay, this is not working, that's not working, that's not working. What do all those have in common? Like for example, there was a car I used to have here, and there was one little ground wire I could take loose on that one car. And not only would the scan tool not talk, the car wouldn't start, and the wipers would run all the time when you turned on the key because of one little ground wire. So be really particular about that kind of thing. Anyway, the cruise control is inoperative too. The scan tool threw me a P0500 code. That's just what I expected. P0500 basically means it doesn't have a speed signal. And a quick look at the live data display showed a 0 reading for the vehicle speed sensor. You know, I drew my own scan tool and put a P0500 up there, but that's what I found, you know. The check engine light and the flash and overdrive indicator, and both are activated, usually indicate a problem will affect both fuel emissions and transmission strategy. Now see, it has to know how fast the vehicle's going before it knows to shift to the next gear. One time, when Jimmy was here, on the side, you got an output shaft sensor and you got a vehicle speed sensor. They do two different jobs, and they're on the side of the transmission, and the connectors are exactly alike. And when he put the transmission back in there, when he plugged those connectors in, he plugged them in backwards. And it's easy to do because they're really close to one another. And before he got to the end of the road down there, he was going like 20 miles an hour and the speedometer reading 85. And so when he went back and swapped them back around, you know, he had proper operation. This is what the speed sensor looks like on that one. You notice it's very similar to the one that was on that Escort. All right, and here's the speed sensor. See, it's grounded. A G201, and it goes through a splice, it goes through a connector, and it goes all the way up here. Now let me show you this. On one of these kind of schematics, if you see dotted lines right here, that means and you also see engine control, you're not seeing that whole circuit. In other words, this wire goes other places besides just to there. Now if it's a solid wire, now if there's a splash, you obviously got some going somewhere else too. But if it's a solid wire, that's the only place it goes. This one here, see that one there, how it's broke? That means it goes other places. And that says see ground. So you're going to see this box out there and a broken wire. That means that this is not the only place the wire goes. So I can't just run another wire from here to here without cutting other things out of the circuit. All right, so since the speedometer was the only part of the cluster that was inoperative, all the other gauges worked just fine. A quick and visual inspection of the speed sensor was ordered. It looked just fine. It actually had a tie wrap. That looked like a new sensor to me. And there was no evident damage to the wire. Well, sometimes we have dogs that chew on wires and stuff and everything. You had that before? Have any of y'all had to fix dog damage or squirrel damage or rat damage on wires? Yeah. You see that too? I mean, they just, you know, stuff doesn't work. And I went out there one morning to get my truck, you know, opened the hood, and some squirrel had made itself at home in there and took a bunch of my copper.
I was not kidding.
Yep. All right, now, look at the way this is. See your vehicle speed sensor right here. And they have a little box right here telling you it generates an AC signal proportional to vehicle speed, uses it to control fuel injection, ignition timing, release of the torque converter clutch, and electronic pressure control. That's your EPC pressure is for the transmission. When it raises the pressure, it holds the shifts longer and all that. Makes it, like when you're into the throttle really hard, you know, it's going to raise the pressure so that it will, the clutches will fly harder and all that too. But you might notice it goes to the speed control servo amplifier assembly. It goes to the generic electronic module. It goes to the rear air suspension. See all these things that are fired up by that? So all of this stuff is using that. Okay, so we got no cruise control. Rear air suspension, I don't think this truck had that, but if it had it. And it also is fed to the instrument cluster, but the generic electronic module basically received that signal too. See, so all of that is need to be known. Why would the generic electronic module need to know how fast the vehicle is going? What do you think the GEM module would do? It's kind of like a body computer.
Did we say that?
The GEM module, why does the GEM module need to know how fast the vehicle is going? If you're not familiar with the strategy, the way they type the algorithm, it's basically, I put a GEM module, I was putting those, replacing central timer modules with GEM modules because that's what they really plug in. The wires will all plug in, it's the same thing, except a little more complicated. Without, and I did them all the way up through 97, and then in 98 I just popped one on there and headed out the back of the shop. Speedometer wouldn't work right because it was basically getting, it needed, the GEM module needed to be, I had to pull the programming out of the original module and put it in that GEM module so the speedometer worked right. There's a lot of stuff the GEM module does with that. One of the things that it was doing initially, if you had your windshield wipers on intermittent, you know, like when you turn them on so that they're wiping about every 8 or 9 seconds, when you were driving down the road, it knew you were driving faster and it would shorten that interval a little bit. Also, if you got your doors open, or if one of your doors is not closed good and the interior light's on, and you're driving down the road and it sees that your interior light's on, and you're going over like 25 or 30 miles an hour, it says, I know they're not driving that fast with the door open, so I'm going to turn the interior light off. I mean, see, it's all kind of nifty little stuff that we can do. And there's other stuff that I'm sure I don't know about that we can do. Of course, there's your heated oxygen sensors and all that. Now, we're going to check for speed signal delivery. What we do on one of these 97 F-150s that's got that body style is we're going to take this and turn the lights on. We're going to pull that knob out one click. Click. And we're going to put a screwdriver in there. We'll push it in that little slot in the back. And then when we do that, we unlatch the knob and we pull it all the way out. Now this is only on the trucks. It's not like it's on a Taurus, even though the switch looks similar, it comes out a different way. This one here, you pull it off, you turn that knob over backwards, and you stick it back on there, and when you turn that knob, it unlatches that switch and you take it out. Now you have to do that in order to get this cover, this panel off, because there's a screw in there behind that switch. If you don't know there's a screw behind the switch, you'll break something trying to bust it off of there. Removing the dash and removing the cluster to access the speed sensor signal. Now this right here, you got this white signal right here, you know, this white connector. All right, that's what it looked like when we pulled it out. You notice what I was doing? I had a dead speedometer. I want to know if the speed signal is making it to the instrument cluster. Got it? Did the same thing. Basically went to that thing. Except on this one, I put the sensor to spinning, jacked the truck up, put it to, started the wheel spinning, and I was reading voltage there. See, I was hooked into the back of that connector the same way I was on the other one. And my little ET332 Mac meter was giving me, this is, you might notice if you can see it clear enough that that's AC voltage I'm measuring. I got my meter set on AC so that I'm not, you know, if you put it on DC and just rename it as spinning AC, you're not going, but it's set on AC voltage, I'm reading that. So I'm getting a signal all the way to the cluster. Okay, so what are you thinking now? If I'm getting a signal all the way to the cluster, and I've actually got good communication on my scan tool, I hadn't found any ground problem yet. What do you think is my problem? If the signal is making it to the box, and the box is not responding to the signal, what does that sound like to you? Everything else is working. I'm talking about on the cluster. All the gauges are working, the speedometer is offline. Even though it's getting a signal. What?
Like the speedometer, the motor.
Like there was something, oh yeah, you're talking about like a stepper motor.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was driving that. That's a logical perception. I put it back together and it started working. It's like rebooting a computer. Now you remember I was telling you about on some of the Dodge Caravans and stuff, and I've actually had people send me emails through my website. And they'll say my Dodge Dakota is doing this, that, and the other, and this don't work, and the speedometer's gone dark, and the door locks aren't working, and all that. And I'll say, this won't cost anything. What you need to do is disconnect both battery terminals, hold those things in your hands, touch them together, and let it bleed all of those capacitors down so that you're basically rebooting everything, and then put it back together.
My cousin just showed me that the other day. I was like, I didn't even know you can do that.
Yeah, well, what you're basically doing is, and more people are becoming aware of it, but I've actually told people that on email, and they would say, yeah, it worked. He says, now all of my stuff is working again. Well, they had 2 vans that were locks weren't working on either one of them, and they were afraid to take it anywhere, but I told them to try that, and it took care of it. This one guy, it's kind of funny, he sent me an email from South Africa, and he said that he had a Mercedes that the water pump was leaking. I guess you can get a kit to rebuild the water pump on a Mercedes, I don't know. But anyway, he was saying it was costing him more than he could afford to spend. He didn't have a lot of money. And he says, what can I do to stop my water pump from leaking? And I said, well, when I worked at a filling station back in the 70s, we put a little brake fluid in the radiator. And you can watch it stop leaking. That seal will get soft and it'll quit leaking. And then you drain all of the coolant back out and put fresh stuff back in it, and it was really good. And so he emailed me back and he says, well, knock me over with a feather, it quit leaking. Looks like I won't need a water pump for a while. But I mean, that's what we used to do. You know, if you had a radiator leak, it was just a little pinhole leak because a rock hit the radiator or something, you can put black pepper in there and it'll stop a radiator leak like that too. Little tricks that people learn, you know, back in the day. You hear about these old timers talking about driving Model Ts, and they'd say things start knocking and they get out there with their Model T stilt, or their silly monkey wrench, and take it apart and wrap bacon rind around the crankshaft and put it back together and drive it the rest of the way.
Yeah.
All kinds of stuff.
No way.
All right, note that this cluster is driven by a microprocessor. The Escort Speedo is electronic, but not microprocessor driven. So you kind of got to know your enemy, so to speak, to quote another instructor I know about. Microprocessors sometimes need rebooting. There was these little Eagle Premier. You ever see any of those? It's like an Americanized R25 Renault. And there was this guy one time, back whenever, I don't know if any of you guys remember when over in Dothan there was a Sony plant over there, and there was a lot of people from Japan that were, around Dothan at the time, because that Sony plant was, a big deal. They were making, this is how long ago it was, they were making magnetic tape, like VHS tape and stuff like that. It was a huge Sony plant over there, right over close to Flowers Hospital.
Really?
Yeah, it really was. It's gone now. I think that place has been bulldozed. But anyway, it was there for a long time. A lot of people made good money there. And the guy came in there one day, and he says, my little monitor, the little box that would tell you if the oil was low and all that, it said monitor on it until something went wrong, then it would shine a message on there. And so I was doing the electronic stuff and all that, and I unplugged that thing and plugged it back in, because I knew on the air conditioner display it would start acting crazy. And you could unplug it and just let it forget everything and plug it back in, it would wake up and start working right. Well, this thing here, I did the same thing. I unplugged it, plugged it back in, it came back on, it worked like it was supposed to. And at the time, I didn't know it, but these tiny little bulbs that were around the Prindle area were really easy to blow those bulbs if they happen to be on and you jiggle them a little bit, which I don't know how they wound up in an automotive application, but anyway. After I did that, he says, I said, come back if it does it again, we'll put another box on there. And so he came back, and I had to put a little box on there. When I put it back together, he noticed his little Prindle lights weren't working. And so the other mechanic that they gave it to for that said, well, it's going to be, $30, $40 to replace these lights. And so anyway, he caused enough of a furor that we all wound up sitting on this dealer principal's couch together. And he was saying, I do not have problems like this in Japan with my cars. Of course I don't know why he was driving an Eagle Premier, and he was throwing off on everything except Japanese cars, which, you know, I ain't got nothing against Japanese cars, but I got tired of hearing him. And I said, you know that little box I put in your car that kept giving trouble? Yeah. I said, it was made in Japan. He goes, oh, I don't know what that meant. Actually, I probably lied to him because I don't imagine it was made in Japan. He was like, you know, so what, that was funny. Well, anyway, we fixed his lights for free. It wasn't a big deal. But allowing the customer CPU to lose whatever trash it was stored in it brought it back online. When in doubt, reboot. You got me? End of slideshow. All right. I hope y'all enjoyed that as much as I did.